Welcome to Wine Soundtrack South Africa. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and followers of Wine Soundtrack. This is Morena Kalo, and today I am sitting with Guy Webber from Hill&Dale Wines. Welcome, Guy. What can you tell me about yourself?
Well, I must say welcome to you, seeing as we're sitting in my office. Nice to have you, and great to be chatting. I can tell you all kinds of stuff about myself. It really depends on what you want to hear.
Where did you grow up? Where did things begin for Mr. Webber?
Okay. I was born in the tiny little railway village of dthe in the Eastern Cape in the sunny Karoo in South Africa. Where I spent the first 2 years of my life, apparently. I don't recall that, but I was told that. And then from there, my parents and family relocated to Bloemfontein, right in the centre of the country. And that's where I spent the next, 12 odd years, where I did all of my primary schooling. And interestingly enough, I think that's where my first experience of picking grapes and squeezing grape juice came from, which is like quite strange because there are no grapes that really grow there apart from the odd vine creating a pergola under which one could have a picnic or park your car or caravan, which was what we had. From there on, my family again relocated when I was early teens, relocated to Pretoria. And I spent the next number of years in Pretoria and did my high schooling there. And as soon as that was done, did my national service in the artillery, like we all did at that stage back in the day. And once that had been completed, I came down to Stellenbosch to come and study wine because that was the only thing I could picture myself doing.
So it's quite a journey through South Africa, but I have to come back to your first experience of grapes in Bloemfontein, because I too am a fellow Bloemfontein Free State girl, and true story. Where did these grapes come from, and what was the story there?
Well, it literally was a question of we had two pergolas, one at the front of the house under which the car got parked, and one at the back of the house under which we ate breakfasts and lunches and dinners and bride and stuff over the weekend. The sort of the shade over the sunny spot, as it were. And look, I mean, I haven't a clue what kind of grapes they were. They were black. I really haven't a clue what grapes they were. The Katorbas get mentioned. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was white at the back and red in the front, black grapes in the front. I think that's what it was, yeah. And you know what they were, I have absolutely no idea. They weren't fantastic grapes to eat. The birds used to, I think, enjoy them more than the people did. But they were vines nonetheless, and I think they served their purpose more in terms of shade than fodder. I can just recall picking grapes early in the mornings in the summer and squeezing them and making grape juice, which we then had with breakfast. Very rustic, unclarified, very fresh, as one does when you're sort of 6 and 7 and 8 years old. But that's my first recollection of picking grapes and squeezing them. Yeah.
So it's come a long way. I think it would be interesting to to know if those vines were still there and kind of see what they were. But moving on to Hill&Dale. So Hill&Dale is a local wine brand. Maybe you can tell me a little bit more about how it came about and about where you source your grapes from.
Yeah, Hill&Dale is a brand of wine, or a wine label, put it that way, which we started back in 2001, if I recall. At that stage, I was the winemaker at Stellenzicht, which is a property on the opposite side of Stellenbosch from where we are now. And at that stage, it was owned by Hans Schreiber, a German banker and financier, who, in fact, in the early 2000s was part of a joint venture with Distil, or in fact at that stage I think it was still Distillers Corporation. And before that joint venture came to being, and before I actually joined Stellenzicht, or at the time of me joining Stellenzicht, the property had a range of wines called Bergendal. Their let's call it second label, for lack of a better phrase. And that was called Bergendal. And then when the joint venture between Schreiber and Distil was formed, the export markets opened up to us a little bit more, etc. And I think the marketing team at that stage, under the leadership of Karina Gous, I think felt that we needed a more English name for the international market, and so the Hillendale, the direct English translation of Bergendal, sort of came into being, and we started producing the wines under the Hillendale label from there. If I recall, we sort of launched the label onto the local market in 2003. And from there it sort of grew and gained in popularity and reputation, etc., etc. But it literally was the translation of the old Bergendal wines. And the whole sort of thought behind the wines was essentially, I think at the time the brief that the marketing guys gave me was to create estate quality wines at supermarket prices. Which was, that's what marketing people do. I mean, you know it better than I do. They give us production people tasks that we can't easily complete. But anyway, I think that the Hillendale wines have actually gone on to achieve really well in that regard. And I've always thought that I think possibly the most important thing for me with the Hillendale wines is that they need to be friendly. And friendly not only on the palate but on the pocket, perhaps especially. But that friendliness needs to sort of run all the way through the wines. And I like to think that there's a friendly team looking after them as well.
Well, I think you're very friendly, so it's a good start, Guy. Right, so what is your current production of Hillendale wines?
At the moment we're doing around about just under 500,000 bottles. I'm trying to think now, 9 different SKUs. At the moment, the biggest single SKUs are what we refer to as our dry Rosé Merlot, and it's about as dry as my throat is at the moment. And then after that, the Sauvignon Blanc, and on the red side, the Merlot and the Pinotage are the two bigger ones.
So you grew up in the Free State and moved up country. What made you want to go into the wine industry, of all things?
Morena, I really have absolutely no idea. My parents used to drink wine. They weren't sort of aficionados, if I could put it that way. But we always had access to wine as youngsters. Not on a daily basis, but I mean, if we were having Sunday meals or whatever it was, we were never barred from drinking wine. In fact, I think that we possibly were even encouraged to have some, which was, I think, sort of quite enlightened at that stage, especially up at that part of the world. I think down here in the Western Cape, I think life was a little bit different, but certainly for us it was, I would say, more enlightened. And I know that my dad, in his youth, he had sort of dabbled with making wine and sort of brewing beer and that kind of stuff at home. I think it was quite a traditional British thing to do. I know that my dad, and we found books and articles, since he's passed on in his stuff, books and articles that he had bought and read and copied, and sort of kept on file about home winemaking and beer brewing and stuff, which I didn't know at that stage. But look, in those days, there was no Google or anything like that. We had Encyclopedia Britannica if we wanted to know something. And also we used to buy books. And as a youngster, as a young teenager, I used to buy books on home winemaking and beer brewing. And they always seem to be British or UK based, using things like elderflower and Camden tablets and things like that we had no knowledge about and weren't able to sort of access. Anyway, there was an apteek, what do you call it, a pharmacy on the northern side of Pretoria, and I can't for the life of me now remember the name of the place, but I found this place by hook or by crook, and they used to sell Camden tablets. Now, Camden tablets was basically a tablet form of sort of an effervescent sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide, or sulfites as we refer to them now, that's always been quite a sort of an intricate part of, or an important part of winemaking. And up until I found Camden tablets, it was really difficult to make anything that was worthwhile. Because I used to make wine from oranges and from rose petals and loquats. I don't even know liquata. I don't even know what the proper name of the fruit is, if that's actually the proper name. But anyway, and made a very successful batch of wine from coffee beans, a sort of a port-style wine, which I fortified with some brandy out my dad's stock, so it was quite interesting, and this particular pharmacy also sold not only the books, but they sold little fermentation locks, and you could buy the 5-litre glass demijohns to ferment in, and tapered corks, because it was always easier to put tapered corks into bottles than try to squeeze proper corks into bottles. And so you could get all the equipment there, and you could buy little sachets of Sauterne yeast and all of those kind of things. So it was really cool, and it was really just a hobby. And once again, I think that my parents were quite enlightened, because obviously at that stage I was underage, but I was given access to a little room at the back of the house where I had my bottles bubbling away and had a stash, and it was one of those things that I only can once ever remember getting inebriated on my own wine. That was never the intention. It was never a bootlegging kind of exercise. It was really just a hobby, which then became sort of my goal, and I happened to be one of those lucky ones whose hobby turned into their career.
That's so interesting. I have this mental image of you standing in some back room brewing up some hooch from all kinds of funny things. I think you're going to be, if you ever ended up in jail, you'll be fine. Brewing your own. That's not going to happen soon.
Hopefully
not. We would miss you dearly. So I know you've travelled the world extensively, and no doubt on your travels you've enjoyed some interesting international wines. Is there one wine perhaps that maybe stands out in your memory of something really special that you might have enjoyed along the way?
I can't really say one specific wine. I think one of the problems that I have is that I have a really terrible memory, and unless I write things down, I don't remember them. And unfortunately, when it comes to wine tasting, I don't write them down. Nowadays, with phone cameras or camera phones, I take pictures, and that helps. But I think the first thing that comes to mind is Amarone. I really, really like Amarone. In fact, I think I quite like Italian wines. I think the whole Italian lifestyle sort of appeals to me, and maybe it's a movie and a picture book kind of impression of the Italian lifestyle. But I just think that the Italian, if I had to come back in life, I think I'd like to come back Italian. I think that would be quite cool. Amarone is something that I really, really like. I like that style of wine. I like the bigness and the boldness. But then I also quite like elegant and refined. And so it really does depend. I like old white wines. I like mature white wines. I like the complexity and the creaminess and the sort of almost austerity of old white wines. You know, just before they die. I like them sort of just at that stage. So yeah, I think more than any one specific wine, I think just on the old white wines, that white Rioja, was it a Vino Tandoria? I think it's the name. Sure, but Tandoria. I think that's the name. White Rioja, yeah, which ages really, really beautifully. The other one that really did well was the Semillons from the Hunter Valley. Goodness grief, McWilliam Semillon, which have always sort of intrigued me quite a lot in the fact that they're sort of almost undrinkable for the first 10 or 15 years, and thereafter they just become absolutely sublime. And that's always been quite intriguing to me. But yeah, I think I like wine in general. Different wines at different times. There's no real special. Although I think, yeah, I do have a soft spot for Pinotage.
Oh, but of course. And tell me, moving back to Hillendale wines, do you have a flagship wine? Is there one that you know kind of carries the flag for the brand, or how does it work?
No, if it says Hillendale, it's carrying the flag. No, there's not one specific wine. No, look, I think that the Hillendale range to me sort of epitomizes wine per se, in that one isn't better than the other or more special than the other. They're just different. They're unique in their sort of ownness. And that there's a different one for each occasion and all the rest of it, which is, I think, what wine is about. And so, yeah, no, there isn't a colour standard. I think that, yeah, they each have their own spot in the range, and yeah, I like that about it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they are approachably priced, you can really have some fun and explore a little bit more, especially to the younger consumer who's kind of entering into the world of wine and not quite knowing what they quite like yet, what their preference and palate kind of is telling them at this point in time.
I think there is that. But I think there's also, and possibly I'm noticing it more because I'm getting there myself now, but there's the mature customer who knows exactly what he wants, and he knows what he's willing to pay for it, or he or she. And so this is the one thing that lockdown has really opened my eyes to, in that it's given me a much better understanding of who our customers are. And I've delivered wine to young people at university reses. I've delivered wine to old folks in mansions in leafy green areas, and I've delivered wine to very, very ordinary people all over the Western Cape, or not Western Cape, but the Greater Cape Town, which has really opened my eyes to who our customers are. And I think that's fantastic, because it's an absolute spread across the population, in terms of group, in terms of ages, in terms of incomes, in terms of just about everything. And I think that's it's been quite exciting for me to see that.
And you can know that you're bringing joy to many people around the country and the globe. Have you got the ultimate hangover cure? Is there such a thing?
No, there's more of a prevention than a cure. No, unfortunately not. I don't actually need it nowadays anymore, but in days gone by, I would have loved to have had it.
Wouldn't it be nice if there was just this magic potion that you can just drink and it takes it away and at the same time it wipes out all the stupid things you did that night before? That would be first prize.
Yeah.
Tell me, Guy, do you believe in the perfect variety? Do you think there is such a thing?
No, it's like the perfect painting or the perfect person, the perfect music. It doesn't exist, and hopefully never will exist. I really hope not, because I think that diversity is what makes for the excitement. Perfection is something worth striving towards, and you hope you never achieve it.
You need to keep it just going to try and reach that.
Indeed.
Forever. Do you have a food and wine pairing that is just the ultimate in your mind? Something that you just always keep going back to and know it's a winner?
No, I don't. And I can't even say that food and wine. I would love to actually say, well, the perfect pairing is just food and wine, because sometimes I'm quite happy to drink wine without eating, and other times I'm quite happy to have a meal without wine. And so, no, once again, there isn't that. But I tell you what, when you do have the occasion to have a plate of food, and whether it's Michelin star type food or whether it's home cooked, or anything in between, and you do happen to have the right wine and the right food at the right place, and they do actually marry, it's extraordinary. It really is extraordinary, and those moments when everything does come together like that are really absolutely fantastic and intriguing, because it's very, very difficult to replicate them. And sometimes it's not necessarily the food and the wine, or indeed even the company. It might be the weather conditions or the environment or the music that's playing in the background, but something triggers it. And to me, that's the intrigue. Just going through the senses on your palate, and sweet, sour, and bitter, and acid, and umami, and whether it's green asparagus or white asparagus, and all of these kind of things. Those things are really interesting, and they make for wonderful experimentation and wonderful chatting and all the rest of the stuff. But again, I think in terms of finding perfection there, I think it takes more than that. I think one needs to have the right time and the right place and the right environment and the right people and the right everything. It's not just about the food and the wine.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. There's too many elements that really come into play when it comes to the ultimate enjoyment of a wine. Even just your mood could have such a...
Totally, yeah. People say that the wine's changed. No, sir, the wine didn't change, you changed.
Exactly. So, each vintage is a different story, or not. In other words, are there more things that repeat themselves in a vintage, or the opposite?
Not quite sure what you're meaning.
So, would you, from your wine that you every year after year, is it more of the same? Is there consistency in what you get out, or are there external factors that play a bigger role in terms of the output?
I think there are an increasing number nowadays of external factors. In the past we used to talk about a dry year or a wet year. Now we're talking about extended periods of drought. We're talking about climate change. Here we are, what's it now, the 20th of June. Outside temperature is probably 24. The sun is shining, there's not a cloud in the sky, and we're looking at a week where the average maximum temperature is forecast to be around about 26 degrees over the middle of winter. This shouldn't be. And so, yeah, they've always been weather factors and vintage factors, and market influences and trends and fashions and that type of thing. I think that nowadays, if I have to compare them now, those outside influences or factors that you call them, I think that they're probably tenfold now to what they were when I started making wine. Economics, marketing, just the sheer number of labels, the global warming or climate change or whatever. These things are all hugely affecting what we do and how we do and how we even think about doing things. Packaging, we used to look for pretty labels and nice fonts and colors and that type of thing. Now we're starting to look at paper-based bottles, when I started making wine, the bag in the box had just sort of started. Look where we are now. We literally are looking at paper-based containers. And we have to look at them because we can't just carry on doing what we've been doing for the last however many years. So I think that, there are lots and lots of outside factors affecting us, and rightly so. Unfortunately, we, I don't want to say that we've been responsible, but we've certainly have some kind of culpability in where we've ended. And not necessarily because we've been vindictive or that we've been negligent or anything like that. We've over the years, we've played the cards that have been dealt, and technology said that fertilizers were good. Now 30 years later, or 50 years or 100 years or whatever the case may be, we find out that fertilizers are good, but you've got to use them slightly differently to what we used to do. And pesticides and fungicides and all the rest of herbicides and all the rest of these things. I think they all have a place and they all have a very important role to play. But technology is teaching us now, and not only technology, but I think also history and more understanding is giving us a little bit more insight into not only what to use and what not to use, but also how to use. And so, I don't think that we were sort of necessarily negligent in the past. I think that we were just playing the cards that had been dealt at that stage, and we now got to deal with a different pack of cards.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the reality is that no one ever wants to do any harm or damage to Mother Earth, Mother Nature. It's just a case of, the information that we had available and the research and the resources led us to believe that what we were doing at the time was in fact the correct way. And now that we're learning that maybe it wasn't quite so, right? We are adapting and adjusting the ways in which we are doing things. And that's great. And I think it can only get better as we get more information and more research and more insight. So we'll definitely steadily move in the right direction, or that is certainly the hope.
Indeed.
What do you do in your spare time?
Not a whole lot. I like to. I'm quite a sort of a homebody. I like to be at home. I have an old Vespa, which my father-in-law won in a raffle in 1958. And we used to ride this Vespa on the farm as kids. And my wife, being on the farm in the Karoo, they used to ride the hell out of this thing. It sort of got put into a shed on the farm, and that's where it stayed for years. And a number of years ago, we dug it out, and the plan was that the boys and I, my sons and I, would sort of rebuild it. And it was sort of more of a fun project than anything else. And then I got to realize that this thing was in fact more special than an old motorbike that one could kickstart and fall and drop and all the rest of the stuff. And I realized that this thing was more than just a toy. It had a wonderful history. It had lots of stories to tell, almost like wine. And so a couple of years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, we had to spend quite a lot of money getting it rebuilt, and guys in Cape Town actually did a hell of a good job rebuilding it. And that's what I really like to do on Sunday mornings, is to take the old girl for a spin. I really like that. I love taking the Vespa for a ride. I also like playing with meat. I like making sausage, making salamis, drying meat, smoking meat, sort of very basic charcuterie type stuff. I like playing with that. I like listening to music, specifically old music, although, quite a lot of different kind of music. I like, not that I'm a big woodworker, I like pottering around in the garage. I like, in the season, fishing, crayfishing. We've got a little rubber duck that we go out with. Not the fancy yachts that the Kalos ride around with. Oh. I don't think there's any sort of one specific hobby that I have or anything. I just like to do odd things. Yeah.
Tinker and play and...
Yeah, absolutely. And I've recently become a grandfather, so I'm hoping that I can become be a bit of a grandfather one day when the kids come home.
I think that's nice. That's something to look forward to, and do fun things with your grandchildren for sure. For a really romantic evening with Mrs. Weber, which wine would you bring out or order?
Oh my. I don't know, what are we eating? Where are we? I don't know.
What does she enjoy?
You know what? It would more than likely be something white. And it would more than likely be something that goes with Asian flavors. In fact, could well be a bubbly. I can't think of anything very specific. But yeah, that's, we both like it, and Janet particularly likes Asian flavors, and she's hell of a good at cooking, especially Asian flavors. And you're not only Asian, but sort of North African, and now with the kids living in the Middle East, also those Middle Eastern flavors. So not that there are very many wines in the Middle East, but I think that's where we would sort of head towards, is a sort of, that sort of region.
Sounds very nice to me. So do you support any sports teams, any local or internationally?
If we're talking rugby, I like to support the Cheetahs. I think just because of the Bloemfontein heritage and history. And of course the Springboks, but that's in terms of rugby. I was a big Valentino Rossi fan. In fact, I still am a Valentino Rossi fan, even though he's not racing anymore. He's still doing great things for the sport. I like to support the McLarens in Formula One, both of them. Although it seems like Cheetahs, McLaren, it seems like I choose losing teams all the time, but they won't always lose.
Or teams with orange in their colouring.
Oh yeah, that's true, yeah. Although Valet was yellow.
Valet was yellow,
yeah.
Yes. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received? Or the best piece of advice you'd like to give our listeners?
I tell you, my old man once, while we were having a bit of a to-do, he told me that God helps those who help themselves. And I think that was quite a wise piece of advice.
I'd say that's sage, definitely. I mean, if you don't want to help yourself, you can't expect anyone, any other person to help you. You need to try and do it yourself and put trust in yourself and belief.
Indeed.
Yeah, I like that one. What is the proudest achievement you've ever had within your winemaking career?
I'm not sure that I'm entitled to be proud of specific winemaking achievements, because I think that most of what we do is nature given, and you really just following the basics. But I think that I'm quite proud of how relationships that we've sort of built up in the industry over the years. I like the fact that I still have good relationships with people that I've worked with, or with whom I've worked for the last 35 years. Not necessarily one outstanding wine that won some fancy award or anything like that, because I think that those come and go, and I think that there's a hell of a lot of luck that goes with that. Whereas in creating and maintaining relationships, I think is possibly more difficult than making a good wine.
I think that makes a very good point, and I think that in every aspect of our lives, your relationships are a sign of your biggest successes or failures. So I really like your answer to that. Is there a winemaking area anywhere else in the world that you would really... Is there a winemaking area anywhere else in the world that you would like to explore?
Explore in terms of that I would like to make wine there, or just explore in terms of I'd like to go there and drink and experience the wines?
Just go there, visit and experience the wines and learn a bit more.
Yeah, no, then there isn't one specifically. I think that that's the beauty of wine, is you can just go just about everywhere. In fact, not just about, you can go everywhere and be intrigued. And whether it's the Muscadels in the Orange River, or the Moscadels in Robertson and Carlitsdorp, or whether it's the Amarones or the Riojas, or the Californians, the Napa Cabs, or wherever. I think that there are, and I mean, I've only been to a handful of those places, and there are just so many more that one can and one hopes to be able to visit and explore. I can't think of any one specifically, but perhaps I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, is that if I do come back, I'm going to come back Italian.
I like your thinking. Okay, we're almost done. But before we finish up, I just want to play a little game with you.
Well, Magda.
Yep. So I'm going to name a variety, and you are going to pair it with either a song or a music artist. Okay. I think we're going to start with Pinotage.
I'm going to go with Rabbit.
Rabbit?
You're probably not old enough to remember Rabbit. Rabbit was a very well-known rock band in South Africa, with Duncan Fora and Trevor Rabin, and I can't for the life of me now think of the other two. And I think probably their most popular song, or their biggest hit in South Africa, was a song called Charlie. It was quite way out at the time, and Rabbit was, now we're talking the 70s, Rabbit was a group which certainly in the South African perspective, or and very much so at the time, was quite way out. Really, really good music, but had the girls throwing the panties and the bras from on the stage and all the rest of the stuff. And I think that certain segments of South Africa blamed a lot of what happened in the country, a lot of negative things that happened in the country blamed on this bad influence of rabbit. And I think that, it would go with Pinotage, not only because it was sort of truly South African, or because it's a South African band. I think that it just threw the cat amongst the pigeons a bit. And so that's why I choose that one.
I like that. I'm going to definitely have to search up on Rabbit. That is a new one
Rabbit
for me.
with a double T.
With a double T. Rabbit with a double T. Okay. Sauvignon Blanc.
I would actually love to be clever with this, but I'm finding it very difficult to be clever with it. I listen every Monday morning. I listen to a broadcast which a friend of mine sends me. It's an old broadcast from Springbok radio days. A show that used to be broadcast at midday on a Sunday morning, called From the Bell Tower, and it's mostly religious music, and not that I'm terribly religious, but it just brings back lots of memories to me. And the Mormon Tabernacle Choir was one of the favorites. There was just about every week they played something by the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And it's something that resonates with just fresh and lively and wholesome. And I think that would be the one I'd go for now. Tomorrow it might be different.
I'm sitting here with the most massive grin on my face because these are so unusual, and it's so refreshing. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. Okay, I'm going to throw something totally different into the mix here. Barbera.
Oh my goodness me. Probably José Carreras. I'd go with José Carreras singing O Meu Babino. What's it called? O Meu Babino Caro.
Fantastic. Rich, smooth, sexy,
And powerful.
Very, very good. Thank you for that. And thank you so much, Guy, for joining us today. Would you like to remind people where they can find your wines, both locally and internationally? And if they wanted to come and taste them, where do they need to go?
Unfortunately, we don't have an open-to-public tasting facility at the moment. The wines are all available online locally at www.hillanddale.co.za. That's and with an A and D, not the ampersand as in the label. And internationally, I think the best is to actually just go to the Hill and Dale website, and there's a list there of where internationally, who supplies them in the different countries internationally. So the website hopefully should have all the right info.
Super. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely chatting to you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack South Africa. For details and updates, visit our website winesoundtrack.com.